All right, so what I want to look at here is problem 19 from section 2 of chapter 4 in the textbook. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the distribution and how we can work on this distribution and find these different values it's looking for. So it says 54% of the US adults have very little confidence in newspapers. You randomly select 10 US adults. Find the probability that the number of US adults who have very little confidence in newspapers is exactly 5, at least 6, and less than 4. And so what we want to do here is we want to figure out what type of distribution we have. And so we have in this a probability of success being stated as 54%. We have a probability of failure then as being 46%, because these two have to sum up to 100. Now, this says we have chosen 10 adults. And if we can look at what we're setting up variable-wise, and again, look at page 219 in the textbook for the summary of the probability distributions, we're looking at a binomial experiment. And so this binomial experiment is going to have these variables to come across. And so if we want to remember what our binomial formula was, then we have the number of trials, choose the variable we're on, p to the x, q to the n minus x. And this works its way through. So we only will have the probability of x being 0, x being 1, x being 2, and so on to the probability of x being 10. Because we only have these limited 10 trials, our distribution is finite. Unlike when we looked at the Poisson distribution, which could go on infinitely, because you could reasonably expect an infinite amount of possibilities, though the odds got smaller and smaller as it got larger. So for this, what we want to be able to do is set up our calculations in the calculator. Now, I want to do this particular video showing the TI 30 XII. And so what the keys I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the individual probabilities I need, and I'm going to type them in. And how I'm going to type them in, and I'll look at the first one, which is the probability of 5. And so the first one we want is the p equals 5. And so on my calculator, well, I'll write it into the equation. We're going to have 10 trials, choose 5, p to the 5th, whoops. We already know what p is, so I'll just put that in, 0.54 to the 5th, and then in q, 0.46 to the 10 minus 5, which is also to the 5th. So once I put this into the calculator, I can go back, and the numbers I'll need to change will be these, depending on which probability I look at. And so on a TI 30 XIIS, I type in 10, I hit the probability key, I use my arrows until I get to the NCR, then I hit 5, then I hit the multiplication, parentheses, 0.54, parentheses, the caret, which is like an up arrow, multiplication, parentheses, 0.46, parentheses, caret, and 5. And so those will be the keys. Whoops. Don't need two S's in keys, right? And noting, right, these special symbols that come through. So getting my TI 30 out here, and I will enter the probability for 5. So I will 10, my probability key, I write an arrow to NCR, I choose 5, I'm going to multiply that times 0.54, the caret, 5, I'm going to multiply that by 0.46, caret, 5, and I get 0.2383189071 and that fills up my calculator display. Now, this is asking us for 3 decimal places, so for 3 decimal places, I'm just going to scroll down to here. I think that will, yep, that'll be good enough. I'm going to approximate this to 0.238. And that answers the first part of the question. Now, the second question says that we want at least 6. And so at least 6, the probability of x being at least 6 means I have to be greater than or equal to 6. Well, that is the sum of the probabilities of 6 plus the probability of 7 plus the probability of 8 plus the probability of 9 plus the probability of 10. And so I have to complete this computation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit up arrow on my calculator. I'm going to have 10 NCR, and I'm going to change the 5 to a 6. I'm going to have 0.54 to the 6th now instead of a 5, and 0.46 to the 4th. And that gives me 0.2. I'm going to keep 4 decimal places and then in round when I'm done. So 0.2331. And now I'm going to do that for 7. So I'm going to up arrow. I'm going to have 10 NCR 7 times 0.54 to the 7th times 0.46 to the 3rd. And that's going to give me 0.1564. And I'm going to up arrow and I'm going to put in my numbers for 8. So that's going to be 8 times 0.54 to the 8th times 0.46 to the 2nd. And that's going to give me 0.0688. So let's see, that's that one, and that one. So now I have to do 9 and 10. So I'm going to up arrow. I'm going to change. I'm going to have 10 NCR 9 times 0.54 to the 9th times 0.46 to the 1st. And that's going to give me 0.017. Oh, it's going to round up to 180. And then for 10, I'm going to do 10 NCR 10 times 0.54 to the 10th times 0.46 to the 0th. And that's going to give me 0.0021. And if I add all of these probabilities together, 0.2331 plus 0.1564 plus 0.0688 plus 0.0180 plus 0.0021, I get 0.4784, rounding to 3 decimal places, 0.478. So 0.4 or 0.478. All right, and then for the last part, we want everything less than 4, right? Probability less than 4. I'm going to change my color here. I think I'll do a blue, and I'll scroll down a bit here. So we want the probability that x is less than 4. Well, that's the probability of 0 plus the probability of 1 plus the probability of 2 plus the probability of 3. Those are all the probabilities. And again, on the calculator, I would type in 10 NC, for P of 0. 10 NC 0 times 0.54 to the 0th times 0.46 to the 10th. And then I'm going to up arrow and work through all these. So for the probability of this to the 0th, again, I can up arrow on the ones that I had before. So if I go to my first one, let's see here, where is it? 10 NCR5. So I have 10 NCR5. I want to change the 5 to 0 times 0.56 to the 0th times 0.46 to the 10th. And that gives me 0.0004. And keep 4 decimal places, then add up. So the probability of 1, I do 10 NCR1 times 0.54 to the 1st times 0.46 to the 9th. And that gives me 0.0050, rounding up. And so that's the probability of 0. That's the probability of 1. I'm going to do the probability of 2. So I scroll up. 10 NCR 2 times 0.56 to the 2nd times 0.46 to the 8th. And I get 0.0261. And now I need to do the third. So I up arrow. 10 NCR 3 times 0.54 to the 3rd times 0.46 to the 7th, and I get 0.0824. And so I'm going to add up these probabilities. 0.10004 plus 0.0050 plus 0.0261 plus 0.0824, and I get 0.114, rounding to 3 decimal places. And so 0.114. And that's how we find our probability distributions for this binomial distribution, using our binomial formula and the up arrow function on the keyboard, or on the calculator, sorry.